welcome into 305 guys here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. I got my friend Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. We probably are going to put this on the 5 on the Floor feed as well. So if you're listening there, make sure that you check out 305 guys every Tuesday and Thursday, typically around 105 or 305, and we cover all South Florida sports. But today we're going to talk, of course, about Jimmy Butler, and in the context of this game of chicken, as we're about 48 hours away, 50 hours to be exact, away from the trade deadline. Before we do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE, put down $5, you get $50 to play right away. It is legal in the state of Florida. To get that bonus, make sure you use the code 5 FIVE. We've also got a promotion going on for the big game on Sunday. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the other name. For the big game on Sunday, where if you are signed up to Prize Picks using the code 5 and to our friend Big Picks Energy, our friends over at Big Picks Energy, also using the code 5, then we're going to take the most lucrative card, whoever did the best on the Super Bowl on Prize Picks, and we're going to give you an additional $59 in promo funds, courtesy of Prize Picks for the game, which of course is Super Bowl 59. So make sure that you check that out. Again, use the code 5 at Prize Picks and get signed up. All right, the news is coming in fast and furious here as we're going forward. And there just was a trade, actually, that was made, and I guess it was Caleb Martin. We're going to get to the Jimmy stuff in a second. But this is happening real time. Caleb Martin traded to Dallas for Quentin Grimes. I don't know at this point. I haven't had a chance to check it out. This literally just came in as we were starting. What else is part of that deal? But there have been conversations about Caleb moving here over the next couple of days. He was signed to Philadelphia. It was never really his first choice. He wanted to play in Miami. Of course, his agent turned down the Heat's original offer. The Heat said, don't come back in 24 hours. We won't have the same offer. He came back in 24 hours. They didn't have the same offer. He ended up taking half the money. It was actually less than half the money if you factored in the years, less than half the money from Philadelphia to make a deal. So never really tied there. Of course, the Sixers have been struggling to get into the play-in. They're, I think, still currently in the 11th spot. Maybe they're in 10 now because they've had a big run, but it's been a rough year for them. But Quentin Grimes and a second to Philly. That's from our guy Andres here on the feed. So Caleb Martin has moved. Of course, Luka and Fox, bigger trades have already happened. But let's get to the Jimmy Butler
Everybody
stuff.
Getting traded but Jimmy. I mean, and honestly, I know that obviously people looked at, the Luka trade through a different lens. Like, oh my God, this is a huge seismic trade. The lens that I looked at it from was like, these MFers, everybody's getting traded but Jimmy. Like that's the way that I looked at that when that came down. So what's the latest, Ethan? Because I've been glued to the set. I've been listening to all the experts, yourself included. I see, Brian Windhorst saying stuff that, we've been saying for weeks, Ethan, about how it's Phoenix or bust from Jimmy, and he's refusing to go to other places. He's scaring away other teams. You talk about the game of chicken. Wendy brings up that, hey, if it doesn't work out with Phoenix at the last minute, Miami could just deal him somewhere else. But for what? I don't know. So tell me where we're at on this.
Well, a few things have happened today. And again, let's start from the beginning. Brian Windhorst on ESPN reported he's been all over the Golden State stuff. Okay, so Windhorst has been all over the Golden State stuff. And essentially, Brian reported is essentially been one of the lead reporters saying that Jimmy is just declining to go everywhere. Okay, so I mean that's kind of what came up this morning primarily. That he's making it difficult to go anywhere at all. And Golden State has been one of the teams that there are some in the organization have had interest in Jimmy. Now we've reported that one of those who was not totally on board with that was Steph Curry. Jimmy's people have been out there kind of disputing that report. I can tell you I'm not the only one who's reported that. There are others who are more tied into the Warriors than I am who have reported that. That doesn't even include Kevin O'Connor, who's reported that as well. So that was one thing that has that we put out there. But also it was put out there by Windhorst that Jimmy has essentially said he would not sign an extension with them. I tweeted, and I'll just throw this one out there for you because this tweet now has gotten the attention of some close to Jimmy. And Donno, if this hits close to home for you, I apologize. It does hit home for most men, I would say. I've experienced this at some point in their life, but I mean, I simply put it this way. Jimmy Butler is The girlfriend who says she just wants to go out, she doesn't care where, and then turns down Italian, Chinese, Thai, French, American, Indian, Korean, Greek, and anything but a Colombian food truck 300 miles away that may or may not have shut down. So that's gotten attention now from Jimmy's people. Well, I mean, once it cleared 1,000 likes and 250 retweets, it got attention from Ernie the Man, who, if you have not been following this story, has become a lead character in this. This has become an episode of Entourage. And he has basically been out there sort of doing Jimmy's bidding, although those who make decisions for Jimmy tend to say that he really doesn't have any influence on anything or kind of know what's going on. The Heat believe that he has spread some stuff out there that has been detrimental to their ability to make a trade. He replied, "It's almost like the boyfriend that is taking her out refused to take her out for the last 2 months just to be spiteful and cost her money from missing work. Now, all of a sudden, in the last week, he has agreed to take her out after declining various luxurious options months prior." So I guess what he is saying, and I appreciate him following along with the analogy. If anybody wants to follow it as well, you can do this. We can do this chain all day, all the way up until the trade deadline, Thursday at 3 o'clock. I guess what he is saying is that the Heat had lots of offers, but now they're finally getting aggressive about trying to move Jimmy, and now they don't have those offers. The Heat dispute that, of course. And the other part of this that came out, and again, I have never seen, Alex, and I've been covering these kinds of stories, but they're never quite like this one over the past quarter century. I have never seen a situation where two sides say the other is lying more than in this particular situation. There is no trust, no belief. I mean, you have to kind of follow it yourself, because if you do talk to anybody on both sides, and I do that, then there's no coming together on this at all. There is no, oh yeah, they're right about that. Oh yeah, that's what happened.
And it's been great. It's been great theater. Like even arguing over when exactly that plane took off. Like Bernie sending out the flight records. Like, well, it took off 15 minutes early. Then I'm thinking, like, well, how come everyone else was there 15 minutes early and he wasn't? Like, what's going on? I mean,
well, literally, the only one that they agreed on, the only issue that I've gotten the two sides to agree on was that story that Channing Frye put out about them waiting on the tarmac for 5 hours was complete BS, which anybody with a brain could have told you that. Like, that's not a hard one to agree on. They actually agree on that one. They did not wait 5 hours for him. What happened was Jimmy tried to arrange alternate plans because he had a business trip. He has made these kind of requests before. Sometimes the Heat go along with it. Sometimes they decline it. Under the circumstances, they declined it. Whenever they've declined it in the past, he has shown up. This time he did not, so they left. That's what happened. There was no waiting 5 hours on the tarmac. Okay, This is the report here from Chris Haynes, because this is the other thing today, and this is where I really want to take this episode, because to me, this is a giant game of chicken right now, okay? Sources. Jimmy Butler's camp has repeatedly told the Heat he's in shape, healthy, and ready to continue his career and move past this immediately. Their messaging to the Heat has been to negotiate the best deal possible, and once in the red zone, if that team is granted permission by Miami to speak with Butler's rep to discuss his long-term future, that dialogue would be welcomed. To date, no team has asked for permission. Now, that language is interesting because it says, to date, no team has asked for permission. It doesn't say what would be the next line, that the team had asked for permission, but the Heat have denied it. It doesn't say that. It just says no team has asked for permission. Now, Haynes is the same guy, though, that kind of, and I love Chris, but I kind of know how he's getting some of this stuff, and he's the one who didn't really have the number of private flights that Jimmy has taken accurately, because I think he's getting fed information about this that, again, is maybe not precise. But either way, okay, the language on this is interesting. To date, no team has asked for permission. This, to me, Alex, seems like a response to the Windhorse reports. And I guess those of us who've piled on those, which essentially are saying that Jimmy doesn't want to go anywhere other than Phoenix. And Brian doubled down on that. So it almost seemed to me, and I have no information on this, so this is not reporting, but we've speculated that at some point the league might get involved, because what Dame did, wanting to go to one team, there was a memo sent out. There's been no memo sent out. This almost seems preemptive, like getting it out there. No, we're open to going somewhere, but we said, okay, bring it to us. and then we'll evaluate it. Of course, the Heat immediately disputed the Haynes report. So I guess we're still here in this game of chicken 48 hours before, where it's, again, Jimmy's holding one card, which is that if they don't trade him, it gets very uncomfortable for the Heat. And he could opt in, and I know Barry and Anthony just did a story on this for the Herald, which you should read. He could opt in, and it could be, if he's still insisting on Phoenix, because Phoenix has really no way to require him. The Heat are going to be in a position where they can't do a sign and trade. Phoenix is hard capped, okay, because of the second apron. That we could be right back here at training camp next year. That's the card that he has, and that's the game of chicken.
Right. Well, and then I also heard that if, they don't get reasonable offers for him, that the Heat are also willing to go that route. So that's the chicken. That's the chicken on both sides. So when you talk about, the Haynes report about the requests about Jimmy haven't been made to this point, how much of that is like teams know they can't fleece the Heat on this one, that Miami is trying to exercise? Because, Jimmy's leverage is the opting in thing, right? Where the Heat's leverage would be, we're motivated to get a deal done, but we're not going to just give this guy up for peanuts, that we're still trying to get the best possible return for our organization. So how much is that complicating things, knowing that they're not just going to take a bag of baked Lays for Jimmy?
Well, I think it does. I mean, I think on the other hand, though, the Heat situation has been complicated by all of these leaks that Jimmy won't go to certain places. Because let's go to one example from a couple of weeks ago. I know that the Heat got fairly far down the road with Memphis. Okay, that's the one team we talked about that on 5 on the Floor. Now there was a report that essentially the Heat asked about Memphis's young players. I'm assuming Jalen Wells and Gigi Jackson were among those. Okay, that would be interesting to them. Okay, because otherwise you're looking at Marcus Smart and some pieces that would essentially you're just taking as expirings. All right. Yeah. So you ask for, a young piece. Jalen Wells is a player that I've talked about a lot that I think would make sense next to Tyler. He actually, funny thing about him is he modeled his game after Wade and Butler. So you just slide him right in. Okay. Hopefully does not model his, I'm not going to play game after Jimmy. But the other part of it though, was that it got out that Jimmy didn't want to go to Memphis. And the reason Jimmy wouldn't want to go to Memphis is they're not going to give him a full extension, because they have to sign Jaren Jackson Jr. They've signed Bane. They've signed Morant. So my understanding on that was that no deal could materialize. And again, whether or not it's because the Heat asked for their young players or because Memphis just simply wasn't going to give up a lot for a guy who didn't want to be there. When you have a player who holds an opt-in for next year, all right, and is looking for an extension and is known to disrupt organizations. Like, this is not the first, as you know. Yeah. If you're a team that's trying to rent him, and it's indicated in any way behind the scenes that he does not want to be there, that team is not going to give the Miami Heat very much for him. So that's why I say that this is submarining it, because it is pretty clear he only wants to go to one place, and it's Phoenix. And I've never seen somebody want to go to Phoenix so bad. I've been to Phoenix. They got a great little pizza place downtown, Bianca Pizza. It's top 10 in the country. I don't know if that's what Jimmy's desire is here, but there's no downtown or anything like that. This is not like going to the Lakers. This is players go to Phoenix because they want to play golf at the end of their careers. This is just they've never won a championship. This is about one team with one owner who is basically willing to give him a max extension, sight unseen. Okay, and that's why we pivoted it to, could the Heat try to pry Durant away? Because some of this has been the connection has been that if you get Jimmy, that you keep Kevin. I want to ask you one thing before we go to the break here.
Okay.
If the Heat don't make a trade, because we always talk about this as a leverage game, as a game of chicken. Okay. If the Heat don't make a trade by Thursday, what do you do with Jimmy then? If you're the owner, do you pay him to stay home?
I think you have to. I mean, what other option do you have? You try to reintegrate him for the rest of the season, where he's probably not going to perform his duties like a professional. Why would I think he would, when for the past, couple months he hasn't, right? So to try to reintegrate him seems like it could be disruptive for the entire locker room. Not to mention, he'd be taking playing time away from guys who are actually part of your future. So, yeah, I mean, unless the league steps in and helps you out, maybe to take the pay part out, I think you have to pay him to sit home. I think that's your only option for the rest of the year.
Now, you do realize, though, and I know there are a lot of fans who believe that, and you certainly can make a case for it, that it's the cleanest option.
Yeah.
But it's $20 million you're basically giving him to do nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 to $20 million.
Yeah.
It's not a small amount. Like, this is not like sending PJ Tucker home, right? Maybe it's a little less than 18, because what are we at now? We're about a third of the season left, essentially, by Thursday, maybe leaving a little less than that. So you're talking about, he makes 48, so you're talking like 15, 16 million bucks. It's still a significant chunk of change. Like, I understand why, and it's also an example that you're setting. Like, that's the other problem here. Is that you're setting an example that you're going to pay a guy to disrupt your organization, make a total mess, and then you're going to send him home with pay. Here's your punishment. Here's your $15 million.
I think you have to decide.
You
have to decide which disruption is worse, because either way, it's a disruption. But like the disruption of actually keeping him a part of your locker room and your group, they have to decide, is that more disruptive? Because you're right, and you brought up a good point about setting that example. It's something I hadn't thought of. But that's a precedent you're setting if you pay him to sit home. But what's the bigger disruption? I mean, personally, I think actually trying to reintegrate him to the team for the final third of the season, I think that's the bigger disruption.
Well, I don't think the players want it. I mean, I know many of them. I'm not going to speak for every single player. I know there are specific players who do not want him back in that locker room. They don't. And I know there are specific coaches who don't want him back either. So if you're asking about the day-to-day operations, that doesn't even get into the staff. Like, if you're talking about the day-to-day operation of a team, this isn't, to me, about whether you can win a championship or not. It's whether you can provide a good working environment at this stage. Like, that's like the low bar right now. And it just may come down to ownership just saying, okay, we're going to pay you to stay home. But again, the problem with it, and we'll get to our sponsor here, the problem with it is that you'll have to make a similar decision in September, October, and you'll be opening training camp. I guess it's in Boca this year, not going to be in the Bahamas, but you'll be opening training camp at FAU is Jimmy showing up? I mean, you're trying to pivot to a new era. That's why they are motivated to make a trade. It's not that they're not motivated. It's, can you make a trade that doesn't destroy the future of your franchise just because somebody is destroying the present? That's where they're at right now. And we're going to keep seeing these leverage reports and these games of chicken until 3:00 on Thursday. All right, let's get to a great sponsor of the 5 Reason Sports Network, our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. You got to look to protect your home or business with impact-rated windows and doors. Well, the Heat are trying to protect their business right now. Maybe they should hire All Pro as well. They specialize in impact windows and door installations for residential and commercial properties. All Pro Construction Builders, a state-certified licensed and insured general contractor. They service Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Broward counties. They use only top-quality products that are locally made, family-owned and operated. Reach out to our friend Danny, huge Heat fan, 305-484-4429, 305-484-4429. Make sure to mention 5 Reasons, and on top of a free estimate, if you end up doing the deal, you get a 5% discount on the entire order. So check them out. They can protect your home in less than 8 weeks. 305-484-4429 or allproconstructionbuilders.com. Okay. We talked about Durant yesterday, Greg and I. And the Heat have had this obsession with Kevin Durant. I mean, a lot of teams have, but the Heat has been specific because they've had direct conversations to try to acquire him. First, as a free agent in 2016, they believe they finished a relatively close second to Durant joining a generational team in Golden State when the Heat really didn't have the infrastructure at that point. They re-signed Whiteside. It wasn't clear what was going to happen with Dwayne. They were dealing with the Dwayne stuff while they were meeting with Durant, literally at that meeting. Okay, they were dealing with Dwayne stuff at that time, and they believe that they came a close second because Spo had this incredible presentation to Durant that Durant has spoken about how to make him his most efficient. Spo has since coached him on the U.S. team, and the Heat also tried to get him from Brooklyn, and it was closer than most people realized a couple years ago. So that's where we're at. Let me just ask you this. We've talked about pivoting to more of a young team. Okay. If the Phoenix thing is just not going to happen with Bradley Beal, because the Heat, I can tell you, are not taking him. Like, it's much more likely they revisit the thing with Golden State and Wiggins or some of these other teals. We talked last night about the possibility of Philadelphia. I've heard that they are sniffing around this situation a little bit. Golden State potentially could take Paul George if they don't get some of the bigger fish. Again, they're reportedly in on Durant. Maybe the Heat end up taking pieces from teams like Philadelphia and Golden State. There are some that might be attractive to them. Maybe Toronto even takes Wiggins in a deal like that. But just break it down to here, okay? And we'll get to the question here from George Hoyos. Durant, I mean, if he's made available in any way by Phoenix, because I know the Heat have inquired. I know they've inquired, okay? But it's a very slim path to a deal. I mean, you do it in spite of the age, in spite of some of the injury history, in spite of wanting to pivot to go young?
Yeah, he's still scoring at a high clip. I don't think it's the wisest organizational decision. However, I am someone who does get enamored with the superstar power. And you talked about going back to 2016, working on acquiring KD. I felt like I was on that journey with the Miami Heat because this is always someone I've wanted. This is not an exact comparison because, the other guy I'm going to talk about was way later, in his career when you got him, but it would almost feel like coming full circle when the Heat finally landed Juwan Howard, like late in his career. Like it would kind of feel like that to finally land Kevin Durant. And listen, he could still help you in the present. There are some caveats there, and he wouldn't be a big part of your future. So I don't think organizationally this is the greatest route to go in, but if you can get this done, bringing in someone with even bigger superstar power than the guy you're getting rid of, I think there is value in that. And I can understand, Ethan, why the Heat would still be interested in the Kevin Durant avenue because he would be very good for business as well. I mean, KD is going to help you sell a lot of tickets, going to help you sell a lot of jerseys. And I still think when healthy, he's got a lot still to give the Miami Heat.
I'm looking at a couple of the comments, and I'm with you on it, by the way. I think you do it. I mean, again, what you have to give up. We were trying to figure out the contracts. Ware's contract doesn't even work. Jovic's contract, it's kind of unclear on how. I know Jay Rich would work, Burks would work, but why the Suns would want to do that? But the question gets asked here: if James says if KD's traded, the Suns won't want Jimmy anymore. I don't necessarily think that's true because that owner is all about trying to win now, and they are still trying to keep Booker happy and at least remain competitive if they're stuck with Beal. And I just want to get back to this also. There were Heat fans who were so angry at the organization for not taking Beal a year ago. And can you see what's played out here? I mean, that would have been a total disaster. And again, it's a contract that they still don't want. Let me read this one comment from George Hoyos here. Again, we appreciate the super chats. Would Wiggins be a player the Heat would be okay with despite the contract? I feel he's a perfect fit for the lineup. Indications are that, I'll just put it this way, they don't seem against it. Okay, they don't seem terribly against it. I know he's got $30 million coming after 2026. I kind of feel that would be a movable contract at that point, and they may look at it that way. Windhorse, who's for sources I trust, okay, he doesn't tend to be one who's swayed by one side or the other. Brian has said that the Heat were interested in that, and I'm going to take Brian's word for it because, again, I've never heard anything contrary. Whereas with Beal, it's always been there's no effing way. Okay, yeah. With Wiggins, you're talking about 1 year at $30 million, and he's been a very good player this year. I'm not exactly sure about his fit with the team from a personality standpoint, but I kind of he tends to be a little quiet. He's not the alpha that Jimmy is. No. And he has
maybe that's a good thing in some ways.
Well, it might. And he's taken some time off, although some of that has had to do with some family situations that he's been dealing with. But he played at a very high level for Golden State and then winning a championship. And he's played at a high level this year. His three-point shooting has been very good. And I've said they need a long defender who can shoot the three playing next to Tyler, and he fits the bill. And so I'm not – if that's what they end up with, I'm not against – that deal. That deal doesn't sink them long term. The Beal deal would sink. Beal maybe be a better player than Wiggins. It would sink them long term. All right, I'm going to let you close this out. We appreciate our sponsors, PrizePicks and All Pro Construction. Sign up for PrizePicks using the code 5. I'll let Alex finish this one. We'll have more episodes throughout the day. We're also going to have coverage on 5 on the floor, obviously, of the Heat in Chicago tonight. They just traded Zach LaVine, so they're going to look a little different. Mm-hmm. You got 48 hours. Well, 49 and a half hours, Alex. Is Jimmy Butler a member of the Miami Heat at 3:00 on Thursday?
I'm going to say no, but I'm only leaning to that about 60% to 40%, Ethan. And maybe I know you said I can close, but I probably want to follow up and ask you if you can give me a percentage, because I'm at like 60,
I'm not doing that. I threw this on you.
Okay, fine. I'm going to do it then. I'm going 60-40. He's not a member of the Heat, and obviously both sides. Well, I was going to say the Heat are very motivated to move him. I think Jimmy is motivated to move, but only to one place, and I think that's why I'm at 60-40 and not 90-10. So yeah, I'm going to say that within the next 48 hours, we're going to have some news about the Miami Heat moving on, because I think the alternative is it's tough, because you're looking at several months of toxicity, and then we've got to do it all over again. So I'm going to say he's going to get moved. I go 60-40. Can you give me a percentage?
Is this the Price is Right? I could go higher or lower. I'm going to go a little lower than your 60-40, but not a lot. Not a lot. Okay. And that sounds like a complete hedge. It is. And it's only because I don't underestimate the Heat's willingness to be uncomfortable. I don't. I don't know. Like, they're weird about this stuff. I think any other organization, well, I don't know what Dallas would do. After what I just saw Dallas do, I have no idea. They would just give away the best player for nothing, pretty much, because they're friends from back in the Kobe days, which seems like what happened between Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka. I think it's a little lower than that, only because I think he's made it so difficult to trade him. And I don't think it's just about saving face for the Heat, but they are not going to take money beyond 26 that they don't like. If they don't like the player, don't see a fit for the player, don't see a possibility to move off of that player if they need to, they're not going to do it. And that's the only reason I'm a little lower than you. So I'll say 53% chance that he's traded. I still lean towards it, but there's a reason that this thing is dragged out when we've seen how many players get moved. We've seen Luka, Fox, Levine, everybody's getting moved, but Jimmy. I until I actually see it, I can't go all in on it. Appreciate everybody for joining us. We'll have more as we go forward. Obviously, Thursday is a big day. We're still planning what we're gonna do for that day, so we'll let you all know. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor, our Discord. Tend to post all this information on the Heat there first. Donno, appreciate it. Maybe we'll have Super Bowl coverage at some point. Does anybody care?
Hey, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I care about my bets. We'll see how that goes. Other than that, I just feel like it's I'm watching the Chiefs every single year, and it feels like the Eagles are in there half the time. So, but I do want to make some money before the Super Bowl or at the Super Bowl.
I'm just concerned that my 10-year-old only cares about Kendrick Lamar. All right, Alex, we appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders, and also Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE.